Good morning. In today's video, we are going to discuss a very important concept in Sanskrit that I had not discussed in the video of vowels, that is Visarga. The Visarga is essential for mastering both the phonetics and the grammatical structure of the language. Currently, many speakers pronounce the Visarga as faint h sound. However, this raises a technical question. If it were a simple consonant, why does it change its sounds based on the letters around it? If the Visarga were simply a standard h consonant, existence of its two primary allophones, jihvāmūlīya and upadhmānīya, would be linguistically unnecessary. The presence proves that the Visarga follows a much more complex phonetic logic. With the assumption that Visarga is consonant h, we pronounce the words that have Visarga like Ramaha, Krishnaha, Indraha, Vayuhu, Namaha, etc. Notice the echo happening with the vowel at the end to Visarga. Now, in this very video, I will also explain the logic behind the transformation of Visarga, but first let's see what Visarga really is. Visarga in Devanagari is represented by two vertical dots behind a letter. In IST, it is represented by H having a dot beneath it. In linguistic terms, the Visarga is classified as a voiceless glottal fricative. To understand, we can break it down into three specific components. It is voiceless because the vocal cords do not vibrate during its production. It is glottal because the sound originates in the glottis, the opening between the vocal folds, and it is a fricative because it is created by forcing the air through a narrow constriction, resulting in an audible friction or breath sound. Classical Sanskrit treatises offer a definitive perspective on the nature of the Visarga, explicitly distinguishing it from the standard consonants. A beautiful illustration of this is found in the following traditional Sanskrit verse. It says, Yatha balasya sarpasya uchchavasulakūchetasah eva mushma prayoktavyo hakaraf parivarjitah. This verse teaches us that the Ushman sounds, the sibilants, and the Visarga should be articulated like the light, effortless exhalation of a young snake. Most importantly, in the end of this verse, it says hakaraf parivarjita, which means that the strong aspiration of her is to be avoided. So pronouncing Visarga as her is strictly forbidden in Asian texts. So how it should be pronunciated? Well, there's a technique for that. To produce a voiceless glottal fricative, position your tongue behind your lower front teeth. As your tongue rests there in a rest mood, release a breath of air or aspiration like ah, ah. Once you recognize the sound of this aspiration, try practicing it with various vowels and consonants. So let's take the example with shwa. So if I have to pronunciate it with a sound, it will sound like ah, ah, ah. Or if I want to say it with the ka, then it will sound like kah, kah, kah. You will note that while you are pronouncing the part of Visarga, you will find your vocal cords are not vibrating. You will find also that the sound is produced in glottis and your tongue has risen above the backside of your tongue and it is constricting the area, which creates this hissing sound more prominently. If your tongue is not at rest, you might find pronouncing Visarga as truly exhausting. So try with this technique with various vowels and consonants. Remember, this technique is just to realize the original sound of Visarga. There will eventually come a time when you will not require it in future. So the words that we saw before will sound like Ramah, Krishnah, Indrah, Vayuh namah. Now I want you to concentrate over the word Vayu and listen how the echoes is already happening spontaneously with voiceless glottal fricative. Vayuh, Vayuh. So I say you and sound is automatically followed. So once we are pronouncing the Visarga correctly, we don't need to focus just too much over that echo aspect of Visarga. It happens naturally. So realizing the Visarga as an aspiration is the first thing to be done, and interestingly, all other rules of the Visarga shall be automatically understood. Let's talk about few rules of Visarga. The Visarga that we have just learned, the rules that make it undergo transformation into sibilants before going for jihvāmūlīya and upadhmānīya. So the Visarga about which we have just learned has three main transformations that it undergoes. The first transformation that happens of this Visarga is when this Visarga is followed by sa, ta, and ta, and also the halanta versions of these sounds. The Visarga undergoes a transformation and it turns into dental sibilant sa. Similarly, if Visarga is followed by sha, cha, and cha and their halanta versions, the Visarga transforms into palatal sibilant sha, and if the Visarga is followed by sha, ta, and ta, the Visarga changes itself into retroflex sibilant sha. Now, you must have already recognized that similarity. Sa, ta, ta all are dental consonants. Sha, cha, and cha are all palatal consonants, and sha, ta, and ta are all retroflex consonants. To understand why does it happen, let's look at the first rule. Whenever Visarga is followed by sa, ta, and ta, it transforms into half sa. When Visarga is followed by dental consonants, specifically the voiceless dental fricative or dental stops like ta and ta, it undergoes a process of dentalization. Linguistically, this is a form of regressive assimilation. The tongue anticipates the dental contact required for the next sound, causing the breathy discharge of the Visarga to be redirected against the teeth. This ensures a smooth physiological transition between the words, maintaining the melodic and orderly flow that is the hallmark of Sanskrit pronunciation. To demonstrate it to you, let's take an example of a sentence. The sentence is Yah satyam vadati tam ishvarah sadaiva rakshati. Yah satyam vadati tam ishvarah sadaiva rakshati. Which means that God protects those who speak the truth always. Now, I want you to understand that I have said this sentence with little pauses in between. When I say it in one breath, listen what happens. Yah satyam vadati tam ishvarah sadaiva rakshati. To make it more audible and understandable, let's focus over just the two initial words of the sentence, Yah and Satyam. And let's listen what happens. Yah Satyam, Yah Satyam, Yah Satyam. I begin with Visarga as a voiceless glottal fricative, but I end up dentalizing it and transforming it into a sibilant half sa. So this is very interesting that the Visarga is going through a very natural process, and the rule that we saw above is 100% practical. Now, rather than forcing myself to maintain that initial voiceless glottal fricative, I just will go for replacing it with half sa. So rather than saying it Yah Satyam Vadati, I will say Yas Satyam Vadati, because it just takes too much time while we are making it. Similarly, in the secondary part of the sentence, Ishvarah Sadaiva Rakshati, becomes Ishwarah Sadaiva Rakshati. So I will not pronunciate that initial forced voiceless glottal fricative, but rather I would replace it simply with half sa. So Ishwarah Sadaiva Rakshati. In the second example, we have Ramah Tatra Gacchati, but when I say it in one breath, it becomes Ramah Tatra Gacchati, Ramah Tatra Gacchati, Ramah Tatra Gacchati. I try my best to maintain Visarga as a voiceless glottal fricative, but I end up transforming it automatically into half sa. So this is because Visarga is basically an ayogavaha, which basically means it's not a consonant, it's not a vowel, it's in between somewhere because it's an aspiration. Aspirations are never fixed, they change based on the surrounding and environment. The same thing is happening here. Now, in the next part, we will discuss if Visarga is followed by sha, cha, or cha, it transforms into half sha. And the reason is same, regressive assimilation. Visarga gets palatalized and it transforms into half sha. For example, Ramah Shukam Granati will become Ramah Shukam Granati. Now you see, I'm literally forcing myself to make it audible enough for you that I begin with a voiceless glottal fricative, but it transforms midway into half sha. So rather than forcing myself saying Ramah Shukam Granati, I will simply say Ramah Shukam Granati because it ends up getting like that. Similarly, in the second example, Ramah Chalati, Ramah Chalati. So I will simply say Ramah Chalati, Ramah Chalati. Similarly, Indra Chhatre Upavishati, Indra Chhatre Upavishati will become Indrash Chhatre Upavishati, Indrash Chhatre Upavishati. Similarly, Indrah Shrestha becomes Indrash Shrestha because it is Indrah Shrestha. So, the only desire of mine to demonstrate the Visarga in this way to you is to make you first realize that Visarga in reality is a voiceless glottal fricative. Without realizing Visarga as a voiceless glottal fricative, if I keep pronouncing Visarga as simple ha, it is quite easy for me to pronounce it ha because ha is a consonant. Ha will never change. So I can say Ramaha Shokam Karnati, Ramaha Chalati, Indraha Chhatre Upavishati, Indraha Shrestha. So the main motive of mine is the originality, the what originally Visarga was supposed to be. And without understanding Visarga, we may never realize why these transformations occur. In the third rule, we have the same thing. Visarga is followed by retroflex sh, ta, and ta. The Visarga transforms into half sh. Now, the reason is same. Ramah shat kakan pashyati. Rama looks at 6 crows. I say it with pauses in between. But listen what happens when I say it in one breath. Ramah shat kakana pashyati. Ramah shat kakana pashyati. So you see that rolling sound that is happening in between, that is extremely hissing as well. That is because my Visarga midway is transforming into half sh. So rather than forcing, because when I'm saying it, I'm forcing myself for it being audible to you, I would just simply call it Ramah shat kakan pashyati, Ramah shat kakana pashyati. Similarly, Ramah tikam karoti will be like Ramah tikam karoti, Ramah tikam karoti, Ramah tikam karoti. But I will simply call it Ramah tikam karoti because I can't force always like this while I'm talking in vernacular. So the rules are very simple, are very practical, are very logic based. So after this, I would like you that you practice these rules while you are reading the Vedas, while you are reading the Sanskrit text, and I hope that you will find these techniques as extremely useful. Our last thing that we have to discuss in this video are the two allophones of Visarga, that are jihvāmūlīya and upadhmānīya. Jihvāmūlīya basically means jihva, which means tongue, mūlīya, which means the base, so originating from the base of your tongue. Now, this is a guttural Visarga, okay? This is kind of like sound, you know. And upadhmānīya is a labial Visarga that gives like sound. Jihvāmūlīya manifests when the Visarga is followed by ka and ka. Upadhmānīya manifests when the Visarga is followed by pa and pa. To give you an example, the first example let's take of upadhmānīya. Ramah patati. When Visarga is in isolation, it remains like voiceless guttural fricative, but as it is followed by a word beginning with pa, listen what happens to the Visarga. Ramah patati, Ramah patati, Ramah patati. If I pronounce it Visarga as her, it is easy for me to say Ramaha patati. There is no need for any of these two allophones, but when I say it, considering the Visarga as a voiceless glottal fricative, automatically it transforms. I need to do nothing. It automatically transforms into upadhmānīya. So it becomes Ramah patati, Ramah patati. Similarly, the second example is of the jihvāmūlīya. And here what happens is that it transforms into a guttural Visarga. So tava pitāmah kah becomes tava pitāmah kah. So you must have heard that sound happening after pitāmaha and before the ka. Similarly, Ramah khadati in one breath will sound like Ramah khadati, Ramah khadati, Ramah khadati. Similarly, in the fourth example, this is example of upadhmānīya, it becomes Ramah phalam pashyati, Ramah phalam pashyati, Ramah phalam pashyati. So, my advice only to you is start pronouncing Visarga as a voiceless glottal fricative and everything will fall on its place naturally. So I also wanted to discuss that how a verse will sound like when we are aware of the rules of the Visarga. Here is a verse, or I should say part of Bhagavad Gita, which is further part of Mahabharata. It is in the beginning chapters and it is the dilemma of Arjuna because he doesn't want to fight with his own kinsman. Arjuna talks with the Krishna saying, Kim no rajyena govinda, kim bhogair jivitena va, ye shamarte kankshritam no rajyam bhogas sukhani cha, ta imeva sthita yuddhe pranam stvaktva dhanani cha, acharyaf pitaraf putras tathaiva cha pitamahah, matulashvashuraf pautrash shalas sambandhanistatha, etananahantumichhami gnantopi madhusudana, api trailokya rajasya hetoh kim nu mehi krate, nihatya dhartrashtra kapritisya janardana. So here Krishna is being asked by Arjuna that, O Govinda, of what avail to us are a kingdom, happiness, or even life itself, when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed on this battlefield? O Madhusudana, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and other relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties and are standing before me, why should I wish to kill them, even though they might otherwise kill me? O maintainer of all living entities, I am not prepared to fight with them even in exchange for 3 words, let alone this earth. What pleasure will we derive from killing the sons of Dhritarashtra? So, I want you to understand and listen carefully how the Visarga transforms, and I want you to practice with any material you have related to Sanskrit. But I would also like to give some explanations from my side, and as many people shall still be adamant that the Visarga is to be pronunciated like her because they hear it being pronunciated as her in classical dentions. Well, my answer to them would be, yeah, it is true. Visarga is pronunciated as her in classical Sanskrit Vedic redentions, but there is a major difference. The Vedic redentions are being sung, and when we are talking in vernacular, we are not singing, we are talking normally. And if they have noted the Visarga is pronunciated as her, they must have also noted this, that leaving ma sound, all other consonants that are in reality there in the halanta form end up getting pronunciated as complete consonants. For example, in the famous Gayatri mantra, the word prachodayat is pronunciated as prachodayahat, and mrityor mukhriyamamritat gets pronunciated as mrityor mukhriyamamritahat. So have you ever wondered why, when it is perceptibly half the there, why it gets pronunciated as a complete ta? Similarly, if the word is ending in a rebhan with na there half at end, it gets pronunciated as rebhanna. Reason to that is it is very difficult when you are singing that at the end of sentence you produce a sound that is something like an aspiration, especially like a voiceless guttural fricative, or even pronouncing the half ta or half na, because it takes energy. And another reason for that is that when you are reading the redentions, when you are singing them, you want your listener to know that we have completed, we are done with this particular hymn. Now we move for the next part. Vedas are having something which we know as chandas, and these are meters. There are meters that are extremely symmetrical. The first verse is as large as the second verse, but in some parts or in some chandas, it is completely different. First is very long and second is very short. So you want your listener to know that we are done with this particular verse and we are moving towards the next verse. That's why you would note that at the end, they automatically add a pitch there for listener to know that we have completed this particular verse. And in vernacular, we should go the way as it has been recommended to us by ancient grammarians. Second thing that I also wanted to discuss was, as we being interested in languages, may that be any, we should be asking ourselves a question. Sanskrit has Visarga, but what is the purpose of Visarga? The grammatical purpose of Visarga and the primary purpose that here in this video I'm going to tell you is its role as a identifier of masculine singular nominative. So in Sanskrit, just like other classical languages of the world, Latin and ancient Greek, we have noun declensions. Noun declensions, we will not go much into them here, but Usually, whenever we say Rama, and I want to say that Rama is the subject of this particular sentence, I will add Visarga to it. So it becomes Ramah. So if I say Rama watches, I will say Ramah pashyati. Ramah pashyati. In Latin and in Greek, ancient Greek, the same thing happens, but they don't put the Visarga on any aspiration, they put half sa. So that's why you would see that the Zeus is having that S at end, because that S represents that it is the masculine nominative singular. Same thing happens with Julius Augustus. But what if I tell to you that the Visarga actually is a mask over an real half sa or sometimes half ra ending? That what I mean basically by these words is that before Visarga, the actual masculine nominative in maximum cases is actually also ending with half sa. So Rama inside masculine nominative becomes Ramas. But due to the rules of Sandhi, which means conjunctions or conjugation of Visarga, of Sanskrit, Sanskrit doesn't allow this half sa. It makes it transform to Visarga. So from Rama, when it transforms into Ramas as masculine singular nominative, it transforms further into Ramah. Sanskrit doesn't allow that half sa ending. So similarly, Indra first is Indras and then gets transformed as Indra. Similarly, Agni is Agnis, Namah is Namas, and Mitra is Mitras. So what it means that all these languages, ancient Greek, Latin, Sanskrit, are following the same system. They put half s at the end of a noun to declare it is a masculine nominative singular. But then you contemplate. Ramah and Ramas, both are quite acceptable. You won't mind if you have to write Indra as Indras for masculine nominative singular. Why doesn't Sanskrit allow the sa sound? Why it makes go through transformation of Visarga? The reason is very simple, and the reason is Sanskrit has the sounds which neither ancient Greek nor Latin possess, and these sounds are the palatal sounds and the retroflex sounds. It might be little peculiar for few people to realize this, that we accept it's understandable in the entire world. Latin and ancient Greek did not have retroflex consonants. They did not have ta, ta, da, etc. But they did not even have the palatal consonants like cha, sha, and even they did not have pure ja. They did not have a pure palatal ja. Now, this might be really difficult for few people to digest, because from very beginning we are used to hear Latin words like Jupiter, or Greek words like Zeus, or Latin words like Julius Caesar, and we always imagined these words having ja at beginning, and how it is possible that they did not have ja sound. Well, that is the reality. Indeed, in Latin, there is no such sound as ja. The J alphabet they did use was to represent E longa. Modern Italian calls it E lungo, and it was basically there to signify a double version of E. Okay, so just like in Sanskrit, you have small e and a large e. In Latin, they had a small e and a large e. Large e went more for duration. So Jupiter was pronunciated as Jupiter, Jupiter, rather than being pronunciated as Jupiter. Julius Caesar was pronounced as Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar, and the pronunciation completely changes. And the Greek Zeus is not palatal or alveolar Z, it is a dental Z. So rather than being Zeus, it was Zeus. Zeus. Your teeth are touched by the tip of your tongue while the creation of this dental Z. And why I am telling you this whole thing is the process of regressive assimilation that I just discussed with you regarding the Visarga is also true for sibilants. So when dental sa is followed by palatal sounds, the sa midway has tendency to convert itself into half sha. So, for example, if I say Ramas Chalati, together in one breath, it becomes Ramas Chalati, Ramas Chalati, Ramas Chalati. Hear that exaggerated hissing sound. That what ancient grammarians must have also noted and realized, and they must have taken it as a breach of some laws. For me and you, it can be a trivial matter, but for a grammarian, it is something which they have to explain. Another thing, Visarga is a very revolutionary thing in Sanskrit, because Sanskrit is a mantric language. Sanskrit was used to make hymns, to make mantras. What are the mantras? What are the primary usage of a mantra? To repeat them again and again and again and again. People do it for 108 times, 1008 times, 100,008 times. It's their desire. So you want your mantra to not have sudden stops in between. So let's imagine that you have a mantra and you have sa. There are grammatical rules which include half sa at the end. You don't want them because sa is like a dead end. When you pronounce it sa, it is a fricative, which means it makes you stop there for some time, and you don't want that. And also because when you are talking about like masculine nominative, there are many things that are masculine nominative. For example, when you're talking about a mountain, it becomes parvatah, but if you don't have Visarga, it will be parvatas, Himalayas, Indras, Varunas, Mitras. And how many times you are just pronouncing the sa again and again? You eventually get bored of that. That's what happened with Latin. Latin was the lingua franca for entire Italy, but Italians removed the sa and replaced them with vowels. Why? Because it takes time. When you know a word is masculine, you know it. You don't need to pronunciate the half sa to make sure that, okay, people will understand that this is a masculine word. You don't need to, so you eventually replace it. Asian Indians didn't replace the sa, but they replaced it with something which is Visarga, voiceless aspiration. And why was it such a nice thing? Because they did not kill entirely the half sa thing. They allowed it in some cases, the cases that we have seen. And what it helped was that it provided a variation to the sound. It was not a fixed sound. It was sound that is always changing based on who is coming next. So very nice invention, I would say. It decreased that harsh and dry nature of Sanskrit, introduced a lot of softness to it, and also it allowed a very smooth transition from a word to another word. So that is one of the best things that happened to Sanskrit. Now, I have explained it all, and there still are a few more rules that I want to discuss in my next video related to Visarga. The students of Sanskrit already know what those rules are, but perhaps they want to know what's the logic behind them. There's a very beautiful logic behind those rules as well. And but one advice of mine, I would not recommend that video to the students of the Sanskrit who are extremely new to it. For them, that next video of mine is of no use currently. It will only add to little bit of disappointment or more, I would say, confusion. So that video is not for them. When they will be ready for that video, they can go and watch it. But for yet, it is the things that are more important I have discussed with you in this video. So if you liked my video, please like, share, subscribe, and share it with the people who are not aware of the true pronunciation of Visarga. It might be very helpful for them. Listen, when you are reading the Vedas, okay, and you are putting a consonant ha at the places where it should not be even there, we are deceiving ourselves and deceiving an entire lineage, which God knows what kind of things they did in order to preserve this vast knowledge, extreme precision and accuracy. So please try to understand the true pronunciation. It would be a great help for every one of us. And once you start pronouncing Visarga correctly, you subconsciously start pronouncing the Vedic accent. This is a strange thing which I'm saying, but you will realize this in future. For you, it would be much more understandable when you would be talking about Vedic accents in future. But with that correct pronunciation of Visarga, that is absolutely not possible. So please share and subscribe, and we shall meet in the next video. Thank you.